The strongest child in the family is rarely the loudest one. They're not always the favorite, not always the most praised. Most of the time, they're the one who learned very early how to handle things alone. Maybe that was you. The child who didn't cry too much, because you saw your parents were already stressed. The one who stayed quiet during arguments. The one who understood problems that were never fully explained to you. People probably called you mature for your age. It sounded like a compliment, but what it really meant was this. You learned to grow up faster than you were supposed to. When there was tension in the house, you felt it immediately. You could sense when money was tight, when someone was in a bad mood, when something wasn't right. You became good at reading the room. You watched carefully. You adjusted your behavior so you wouldn't make things worse. While other kids focused on being carefree, you focused on being careful. You tried not to add stress. You tried not to be a burden. And without realizing it, you took on a role that was never officially given to you. The strong one. The strongest child often becomes the emotional support system of the family. You were the peacemaker, the responsible one, the one who listened. Maybe your siblings came to you when they were upset. Maybe even your parents vented to you. You became the stable one. And when people see you as stable, they start depending on you. Over time, it becomes expected. You handle it. You deal with it. You don't complain. But what people don't see is how heavy that responsibility can feel, especially for someone who was still just a child. Because here's the truth. Being the strong one doesn't mean you weren't hurting. It just means you learned to hide it well. You cried in private. You processed things alone. You told yourself, I'll be fine. You pushed your feelings aside because there wasn't space for them. Somewhere deep inside you believed that if you fell apart, everything else might fall apart too. So you stayed composed. You stayed controlled. You stayed strong. As you grew older, that strength turned into independence. You don't like relying on people. You don't ask for help easily. Even when you're overwhelmed, you tell yourself you can handle it. Hyper-independence feels safer. Depending on others feels risky. Because growing up, you learned that the only guaranteed support system was yourself. That makes you capable, responsible, reliable. But it can also make you lonely. The strongest child often struggles with vulnerability. When someone tries to take care of you, it feels unfamiliar. When someone asks, "Are you okay?" your first instinct is to say yes, even when the answer is no. You're used to being the one who checks on everyone else. You're not used to being checked on. And sometimes, you don't even know how to explain what you're feeling, because you spent so many years minimizing your own emotions. Another common trait of the strongest child is overthinking. You became good at anticipating problems. You think ahead. You prepare for worst-case scenarios. That skill probably helped you survive chaotic or stressful situations growing up. But now, it can turn into anxiety. You replay conversations. You analyze people's tones. You try to prevent conflict before it even starts. Your mind is always scanning for potential issues because that's how you learn to stay safe. And then there's the quiet pressure you put on yourself. High standards. High expectations. You don't want to disappoint anyone. You feel responsible not just for your own success, but sometimes for your family's well-being too. Even as an adult, you might feel like you have to make it, not just for yourself, but for everyone. That weight can be motivating, but it can also be exhausting. Sometimes, if you're honest, there might be a little resentment inside you. Not hatred, not bitterness, just a quiet sadness. A wish that someone had stepped in for you the way you stepped in for others. A wish that someone had noticed you were struggling too. That someone had said, "You don't have to be strong right now. You can just be a kid." But that moment never really came, so you became your own protector. The important thing to understand is this. You didn't choose that role consciously. You adapted to your environment. You became strong because the situation required strength. It was survival. And surviving like that builds incredible resilience. You probably handle stress better than most people. You stay calm under pressure. You think logically in emotional situations. Those are powerful traits. They will serve you well in life. But strength should not become your identity. It should not become a cage. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to not have everything figured out. You are allowed to say, "I need help." Real strength is not about carrying everything alone. It's about knowing when you've carried enough. If you were the strongest child in your family, you deserve softness too. You deserve relationships where you're not the therapist, the fixer, or the leader all the time. You deserve to be supported without having to earn it. You deserve to be loved not because you're useful, not because you're responsible, but simply because you exist. Being the strongest child shaped you. It made you resilient. It made you aware. It made you dependable. But it doesn't mean you have to live in survival mode forever. You survived what you had to survive. Now you're allowed to heal. Now you're allowed to experience life without constantly bracing yourself for the next problem. And maybe the strongest thing you can do now is something that once felt impossible. Letting yourself be human. Letting yourself feel. Letting yourself be seen. Not as the strong one. Not as the responsible one. Just as you.